technique, physical attributes, power, fear, mystery. Sonny Liston is considered to be one of the most devastating heavyweight champions of all time, with a tragic and premature ending. He's an enigma of which we know very little. We don't even know the certainties around his birth or death. But we do know how great of a prize fighter he was. I asked the question in the 70s timeline, what if he'd survived and continued on fighting into the decade in his quest to regain the title? Today, we look to answer this, again aided by the simulation of Fight Night Champion, as we were in the Great Heavyweight Tournament. I've taken special care to remain as realistic as possible in Sonny's career path within boxing. So this means no mob influence, politics, or anything else to get in the way of potential bouts. We'll begin from Sonny's final bout in reality, his bashing of Chuck Wepner, and go to a point in which I've predetermined he would hang up the gloves due to his projected age. So, I ask you, what if Sonny Liston joined the elite crop of the 1970s heavyweight division? Here's how I'd see it going. Originally, 1970 saw Joe Frazier unify the alphabet titles, Sonny have his last match, and Muhammad Ali return from exile. Frazier and Ali were on a clear collision course, one that saw a final tune-up for the champion in a cross-weight class battle between himself and light heavyweight champion Bob Foster. In this what if, Frazier instead will seek a tune-up against Sonny Liston, seeking to bury Liston's notion that their matchup would be like shooting fish in a barrel. The fight played out like the first bout between Joe Frazier and George Foreman. Sonny trounced Frazier in such devastating fashion that the fight is retroactively referred to as Liston Patterson 3. A drastic change in heavyweight history, spearheaded by the aging underdog Sonny Liston. This victory has made Liston the second man to regain the heavyweight title after Floyd Patterson, the man he dominated twice with ease. Sonny is now also the oldest heavyweight champion ever at the age of 38, having upseated Jersey Joe Walcott over 20 years before George Foreman did so in reality. Liston is now forever ingrained between Walcott and Foreman in the history books. With Liston as the new alphabet champion, the new undisputed matchup is to be contested between he and Muhammad Ali in a trilogy bout. Is there a new fight of the century on deck? Meanwhile, for the beaten champion Joe Frazier, the Sunshine Showdown's repercussions have come 2 years earlier. This wake-up call sends Smokin' Joe into overdrive as he relentlessly seeks to become undisputed champion. George Foreman begins his rise toward the title picture, as in reality, with wins over Gregorio Peralta and George Chuvalo. Originally, Ali and Frazier fought the fight of the century, and Joe cemented himself as the true undisputed champion. Ali hit the comeback trail 4 months later in his quest back to the title, while Joe took the rest of the year off. In this reality, Ali takes to the press to brag of how he was right all along about Joe not being the true champion due to his loss to Liston. Ali also continues claiming the title is still his, stamping this fact with his 2 previous victories over Liston years earlier. The fight will see an exiled, eroded and overconfident Muhammad Ali take on a Sonny Liston who has trained to be in the best shape of his life, realizing he can't take Ali lightly. Liston has turned back the clocks and entered a new prime, similar to Evander Holyfield in the mid-90s. The fight played out like the first fictional bout between Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. Ali didn't see Liston as too credible a threat and paid the price for it early before storming back on the cards and securing a 15th round knockout. It's the worst beating of his career up to that point, similar to the real battle with Frazier. Despite losing, Sonny finally gains the full love and respect of the boxing world. He looked tremendous in defeat, pushing his conqueror to the brink. He may not have regained the title in full, but he proved his greatness, akin to Wilder in his trilogy loss to Tyson Fury. In the post-fight, the battered Ali gives Liston credit in the same manner in which he did for Frazier after Manila. Liston Ali 3 is retroactively referred to as the fight of the century in this timeline. Both men take the rest of the year off. Meanwhile, Joe Frazier's road back to the title sees him cross paths with up-and-coming Earnie Shavers. Frazier chose Shavers over George Foreman for this match because he saw Earnie as the better test. As in reality, Frazier views Foreman's record as being bloated and doesn't see him as his kryptonite. Liston and Ali are his goals. After being floored early, Joe storms back to win by knockout. George Foreman also continues his rise up the card, as in reality, somewhat relieved that he doesn't have to face Joe Frazier for the title because, remember, George admitted that he feared Smoking Joe at the time. Originally, 1972 was a narrative-building year. Good matchups, but nothing too drastic. In this timeline, 1972 will see 3 historic matchups, 2 of which never happened. Originally, this was the fight everyone wanted, and it surpassed expectations. This reality saw it postponed a year, and with Ali as undisputed champ already. It plays out the exact same way, with Frazier getting the win over a 15-round war, thus becoming a 2-time champion in his own right. Ali hops on the comeback trail, having experienced his second wake-up call after the Liston War a year earlier. Debate ensues on whether this should be known as the fight of the century, and boxing fans struggle to pick a favorite between this fight and Ali Liston 3. Frazier takes the rest of the year off and contemplates retirement, having taken some considerable beatings over the past 2 years. He decides to defend the title just once against the winner of the coming Sonny Liston, George Foreman, title eliminator, and signs to fight him in the opening of the next year. A fantasy dream match between master and student that plays out like Foreman-Lyle. An intimidated Foreman loses a tactical slugfest to Liston, who has to use his superior boxing ability to outwit Big George. Foreman shows incredible heart. His profile as the big bad headbreaker is diminished, and he gets back to work on returning to the title picture and to form. Up next is a short tune-up bout that turns out like Shavers Norton. In this reality, Norton was still undefeated up to this point, and Liston turns out to be his first conqueror. Sonny is on his way to a rematch with Joe Frazier, this time for the undisputed title. Sonny has the chance to become the first ever 3-time heavyweight champion and again, the oldest heavyweight champion ever up to this point. Originally, 1973 was the year of George Foreman and the second wake-up call for Muhammad Ali. This time around, George has been banished to the bottom of the ladder by Liston, for now at least. Events between Ali and Norton play out the same, with them splitting fights and Ali gearing up for a rematch with Frazier and a shot at the title in the next year. Undisputed champion Joe Frazier prepares to avenge his lone loss against his self-perceived kryptonite, Sonny Liston. Frazier approaches the fight as he did the rematch with Foreman in the Rio 1976, taking a more defensive approach. He manages to outlast Sonny for the knockout, proving he is perhaps the best of his generation, much to the ire of Muhammad Ali. A two-time champion who has beaten every man he's faced in a relatively short career. However, instead of retiring, Joe has found new resolve and determines to defend the title against a hand-picked challenger. As you probably suspect, this is the Sunshine Showdown. George Foreman obliterates Joe Frazier in this fortunate chance of a lifetime after he was originally halted by Sonny Liston. Smokin' Joe sees now who his true kryptonite is and dedicates himself to never underestimating an opponent and to defeating George Foreman. Foreman regains his status as the premium terror of boxing and believes in his own hype. He has overcome his fear of Joe Frazier in decisive fashion. There is only one other who he still fears. Instead of Jose Roman making history as the first Puerto Rican to challenge for the heavyweight title, we get the rematch of the sparring partners. Master versus student, a student who is now champion. Foreman decided on challenging Liston to complete his year of conquest, a year in which Big George would take down both men he feared. It is once again a slugfest, but Foreman comes out on top this time, utilizing his own underrated and old-school boxing ability. George Foreman, as in reality, seemed invincible. Originally, 1974 was the most pivotal year of the 70s, seeing the landscape shift amongst the rock, paper, scissors of the golden age. George Foreman was the invincible champion who'd crushed the two men who'd beaten Muhammad Ali. Ali himself avenged his loss to Frazier and shocked the world against Foreman, just as he did 10 years earlier against Sonny Liston. In this what if, it plays out the exact same, as Sonny sits the year out to contemplate retirement, with age and health catching up to him. Remember that Sonny is, at minimum, 42 years old at this point. It all feels like deja vu, watching Ali topple the boxing world again and reignites a final spark in Sonny. A drive to regain the title and finally defeat Muhammad Ali. Originally, 1975 saw the return of the Ali era in full. The Ali-Frazier trilogy conclude, and George Foreman host a circus show. This largely plays out the same, but with a few additions. Originally, Lyle fought and lost to Jimmy Young before going on to lose to Ali. In this timeline, Lyle goes to war with Sonny Liston and is stopped late by the Big Bear in a grand display from the aging ex-champion. As in reality, it is the loser of this affair that goes on to face the champion. Lyle loses to Ali, as in reality. This win does wonders for Liston, as he sees he can still hang with the top contenders. In another bid to regain Ali's attention, Liston rumbles with the Black Destroyer, Earnie Shavers. They are two of the hardest hitters in the history of the division, and they don't disappoint. Sonny, just barely, makes it out of the war by gassing and knocking out Shavers late. The bout does well to up the stock of both men, similar to the effect of the Tyson-Ruddock bouts in the 90s. In the aftermath of Liston Shavers, Sonny calls out the self-exiled George Foreman to a trilogy rubber match. Foreman accepts and can retroactively thank Sonny for saving him from the embarrassment of the original timeline in which Foreman took on 5 other men and seemingly forfeited his right to a rematch with Ali due to timing. The bout sees George Foreman begin regaining his confidence after having been thoroughly beaten in Zaire by Ali. He and Liston go 12 rounds, trading blows, enduring adversity, and answering the bell at each ring. In the end, Foreman is awarded a decision win and feels more ready than ever to rematch Ali. It was like witnessing one last sparring session between the two. Liston wishes Foreman all the best in his quest toward the title and announces his retirement, fading into the respect and adulation of the boxing public. He is at peace, knowing that George, his student and sparring partner protege, can ultimately be the one to defeat Ali for them both. History largely plays out the same from here, with a few differences. Ali's reign continues strong up until the fight with Shavers in 1977, a bout that ends up being his career finale, as he holds the title until his mandatory defense in 1978 and retires on top. This Muhammad Ali beat every man he ever faced and makes no comebacks. Joe Frazier's path ends the same, as he retires after the loss to George in 1976. He also makes no comebacks. George, though better off, is not yet the Foreman we came to know in his wiser years. He is still banished into retirement after the Jimmy Young loss in 1977, after a great 1976. His comeback in 1987 is now influenced also by the great showing he saw from his aged mentor, Sonny Liston, in the 70s. His comeback goes the same, with George becoming the oldest heavyweight champion ever. Sonny, now an old man, is there to congratulate and celebrate the victory of his student. He goes on to live a long and healthy life until his death somewhere in the 2010s. And so ends this fantasy tale of the great Charles Sonny Liston. Ultimately, Sonny retires as a respected legend. Frazier and Foreman's legacies remain mostly the same. Ali's legacy is actually slightly better, as he's still the first 3-time champion and retired having beaten every man he faced. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. What would you change? How do you think it would play out? Also, this one is for Mr. GEZZA, a man I've met over in the Boxing 24/7 forum community, who I'm very grateful publishes my articles. I hope you enjoyed, good sir. This one is dedicated to you. This one's all for you. Fast-tracked it just for you. I really appreciate your support. You always come out. You're very kind. You've even had my back in some of the comments where there were some misunderstandings. So God bless you, good sir. Thank you very much. And God bless you all. Thank you for watching again. I will see you next time. We're going to begin the Lost Generation documentary series. I can't wait. See you then. Oh, and stay frosty.